Tomorrow morning, Saudi Arabia wakes up, and every oil field is empty. No warning, no explosion, no war, just gone. For decades, oil transformed Saudi Arabia into one of the richest nations on earth. So if it all disappeared overnight, would the country collapse? Or has Saudi Arabia been preparing for this moment all along? At first, the answer seems obvious. No oil means no money. No money means no economy. Right? Not exactly. Because while the rest of the world saw Saudi Arabia as an oil giant, Saudi Arabia saw something else. A countdown. Before we can answer whether Saudi Arabia could survive without it, we first need to answer a much simpler question. How dependent is the country really? Most people know Saudi Arabia is one of the world's largest energy exporters, but very few realize just how deeply that single resource shaped the nation's economy. For decades, it generated a huge share of government income. It financed roads, hospitals, schools, airports, and transformed vast stretches of desert into modern cities. In many ways, modern Saudi Arabia wasn't simply enriched by this resource, it was built on it. Which means, if it disappeared tomorrow, the country wouldn't just lose an industry, it would lose the very foundation that supported its economy for generations. So, does that mean Saudi Arabia collapses overnight? Not even close. The biggest surprise is that Saudi Arabia wouldn't wake up bankrupt. In fact, life on the first day would probably look surprisingly normal. Schools would open, hospitals would continue treating patients, supermarkets would still have food on their shelves, the lights would stay on, salaries wouldn't suddenly stop. So, what makes that possible? One word: preparation. Long before anyone imagined a future without oil, Saudi Arabia understood a simple reality: depending on a single source of wealth is a dangerous strategy. That's why, over the past 2 decades, the country quietly accumulated hundreds of billions of dollars in financial assets through its sovereign wealth fund and other national reserves. Instead of leaving all its wealth underground, Saudi Arabia began buying pieces of the world above it. Technology companies, airports, hotels, renewable energy projects, sports, infrastructure, businesses across dozens of countries. These investments weren't made by accident. They were made for a future exactly like this one, but even hundreds of billions of dollars come with one unavoidable problem. Eventually, they run out. The truth is, Saudi Arabia never wanted to rely on its savings forever. Those reserves were never meant to replace its economy. They were meant to buy something far more valuable: time. Time to build new industries, time to attract new investors, time to create jobs beyond the energy sector. In 2016, the kingdom launched one of the most ambitious economic transformations in modern history. It called it Vision 2030. At first glance, it looked like a collection of expensive megaprojects, futuristic cities, luxury resorts, international sporting events, concerts, tourism, entertainment. But behind all of those headlines was a much bigger objective: reduce dependence on a single resource. The idea wasn't to replace oil overnight. That would be impossible. The idea was to use today's wealth to build tomorrow's economy, an economy driven by technology, manufacturing, mining, logistics, tourism, finance, renewable energy. Because Saudi Arabia understands something many resource-rich countries learn too late: natural resources can make a nation rich, but they cannot guarantee its future. That's why billions of dollars are being invested today, not because the country expects oil to disappear tomorrow, but because it knows the future may not look like the past. Which brings us back to our original question: if every oil field disappeared tomorrow, would all of this be enough?